Hey, folks, for episode 69 of the Rental Roundtable, we had my friend Rob Mays. He's the general manager of Empower Rental Group. I've known Rob for many years now. He talked about his career as a financial planner, finance major from Auburn, and how he realized he wanted to build a business. So he talked to a lot of people and realized that rental was a place where if you put the work in and you're patient, you can build a successful career. And he's been in rental now for over 10 years. Talked about that transition. He worked at a 6 location group that was acquired by Herc and what that transition was like from an independent to national player, and now is running 2 locations for Empower Rental Group. They've got over 35 locations, a really fast growing regional player backed by private equity. And he talked about some of the things that's made him successful in his career, particularly now running a 2 location branch in Alabama. So awesome episode. I've known Rob for a few years. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, guys, welcome to the Rental Roundtable, episode number 69. We have on Rob Mays. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So you lived in Annapolis, Maryland. It's where I'm from. We were playing the name game earlier. We probably know over 100 of the same people here. So we know the same people going back probably what 15, 20 years. You know, my brother-in-law, I
Probably.
know your friends. Yeah. So not only the rental side, we have a lot of other family friend connections. So I always good to have some background here. You've had a great experience. You Auburn University grad, and you've been in different rental companies. An independent player that was bought by a national player. Now you're general manager at a power rental group. So you've been rental now over a decade. It starts to get in your blood, I'm assuming. But I'd love to talk about your background. We got some interesting topics today, talking about what it's like to work at an independent, a national player, how you run a 2 location branch today. But to start things off, Rob, love to hear about your story. How did you get here today?
Yeah, thanks. It's been a pretty wild ride. So I graduated from Auburn with a finance degree in 2009. I went back to spent a little bit of time in Annapolis, and then eventually went back to Huntsville, Alabama, where I'm from. Worked in our family business for probably 3 to 4 years. That was financial planning. I was terrible at it. I would sit there in meetings and just kind of daydream of being the guy on the other side of the table who was building a business, and
Mm,
that I tried to get a hold of it, and I just never really could. And so one day my dad sat down with me and said, "Look, you need to decide if this is what you want to do, and if so, start performing, and if not, figure something else out." And it was a tough love conversation, but I'm incredibly grateful for that because that got me into the rental business. So once that started, I started looking around to see, where could I go and learn. I moved to Greensboro, North Carolina, and spent almost 2 years there at a rental works. We were probably 70% tool, gen rent, 30% party. So I did that for a while. I worked, I'd get up in the morning and do deliveries before we opened, then open the gate, work all day, do a couple deliveries or pickups in the evening. It was a lot of hours, 6 days a week. But I really kind of trial by fire, got in there and learned a lot about it. After that, I was traveling around the Southeast trying to find a rental store, somebody, something that was tired and ready to have a change in ownership that I could buy. And we really just weren't coming up with anything. It was during one of these big roll up seasons and I wasn't able to find much. And so, through some friends in Annapolis, said, "Why don't you come up here and be a part of this?" There were 3 locations at the time. I moved up there in January of 2016, I believe it was. Started in the yard and kind of worked my way through. I did the yard for a while. I was in kind of an assistant manager position, which basically meant your salary and you covered the counter wherever they needed help. I did outside sales for about 18 months, dispatch for a while, branch management for a while. And then the last 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years, were really spent on kind of policies and procedures and scaling and kind of business operations, doing a lot of site selection, figuring out how to make the things that we committed to happen. And that was a lot of fun. So did that until we sold to Herc, which would have been probably, I think that was late March 2023. Um, I stayed on for about 6 months. I was involved in kind of the handoff because I owned most of the systems, all of our software stuff, the telematics, all the leases, all the security stuff, kind of the day to day things that you have to do. So I'd help kind of convert all those over into the Herc ecosystem. And then volunteered for the acquisition team and spent about 4 or 5 months in Delaware helping with an acquisition there. And that was a lot of fun, but I've got 2 young kids at home. And, after a lot of prayer and thought, we decided this is probably a good time for us to move back south. So we explored some opportunities, and one came up with Empower Rental Group. I currently manage two locations. We've got one in Northport and one in Jasper, both in Alabama. Probably both about Birmingham metro area. Northport is right next to Tuscaloosa, and then Jasper's in Walker County. So I've been here for a little bit over a year, and it's been a lot of fun.
So you're Auburn guy living close to Tuscaloosa. I don't know about that. A little too
Yeah,
close for you guys.
I don't talk about that a whole lot, but yeah, that's what it is. So
You got Auburn's 1-0. I don't know what they'll be when we release this episode, but right now you guys are undefeated, right on track for the national championship at 1-0.
that's
So,
right.
and I think so. It's interesting. Your background, you were a financial planner, the finance background, and you're like, hey, this is not for me. What's your dad's name, by the way? Is his name also Rob?
Robert Mays, yes.
Okay, I think I met your dad in college, Blue Point or something. Because I
Yeah,
was also
Blue
thinking
Creek
about
Investment Partners
Blue
was the
Creek.
name of the
Yeah,
firm at
I
the
was
time.
thinking
Yeah,
about I studied engineering in college and did not want to be an engineer. So I was exploring different careers. He was nice enough to have a conversation with me. I also found out that I like to build things myself, not necessarily with my hands, but with my brain and software. So I did talk to your dad, very nice person. But it's interesting. You were kind of sitting there and you said, okay, I want to go build a business, right? And you didn't want to do financial planning. So what type of business? There's probably a trillion types you could kind of go into. How did you decide that rental was the place to go to? Like, how did you pick that one out of the trillion other things you could have done?
yeah. So a lot of it was kind of logic based in that you see a market that requires a lot of hard work, but isn't hyper complicated, and so this is something that
Mm,
with good discipline and just the sweat effort, you can make a really good living in here. It was really helpful to
mm,
have kind of a data set of people who had been in this business and had done it successfully. There's a track record. You could kind of see a path for, hey, this is a viable industry, and this is something that's not going anywhere. It's not getting replaced. There are, roll up cycles, but the industry as itself, as we've both seen, has continued to grow and looks like it will for the foreseeable future. So it was really compelling, for those couple of reasons.
and AI is not going to replace equipment rental companies anytime
Did you
soon.
see that?
Maybe
I think it was somewhere in Europe. They took out a big billboard over a job site and said, "Hey AI, build this job or build this building." It's I mean,
we're
there's things where
still waiting on
yeah,
that to
there's
happen.
there's certainly ways that we can implement AI, and we're starting to see that more and more. But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, we still need mechanics turning wrenches and drivers delivering equipment and people going out and understanding what exactly are you trying to do and how can we support you in that. And that's there's a lot of fun there.
I want to come back to the AI topic. We weren't planning on talking about that, but I'm interested in your thoughts. So you're finishing your financial planning job and you're talking to people. Were you talking to just a broad variety of people, and you talk to rental companies, and maybe you talk to I don't know, every manufacturers and anything else in the world, right? And what you sort of said you were solving for was an industry that was growing, an industry that if you put the work in, you'd be successful, right? And that's sort of was that sort of your criteria for figuring out where you wanted to land, which, by the way, you've been doing now for over 10 years, so, right? I think it was the right decision, but what was your thought process you thought about entering the rental industry as someone who didn't grow up in the rental industry necessarily?
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't grow up anything near this. And really, it's all relational at the end of the day. I mean, I had
Yeah.
several friends who were able to point me to other people to say, hey, these people have done it. These people are willing to pour into the next group of guys who want to do it. You should look at this. And so at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, it all comes back to relationships.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that comes up on the Rental Roundtable podcast. It's hard work and the relationship side of things. And again, another reason why AI is not going to replace stuff here. What was it like going through the acquisition by a national player? So Sam Wagner, he was our second guest here. Obviously, you're episode number 69. Our second guest was one of your partners at Rental Works. So six or seven locations at the time of the acquisition. And I've talked to him since you guys were acquired by Herc. But what was that process like going through his acquisition and going, hey, this family owned business that I've sort of loved over the last, whatever, 6, 7, 8 years is now going to be owned by a national player as an employee there. How did you feel about that? What was that experience like?
Herc was a really good partner in this. I can't say enough good things about him through this whole process. I think the kind of human element is to be fearful of change, but really we just looked at it as an opportunity. I mean, we had a whole new world of resources that were open to us that were never available before. I mean, all sorts of rental classes that you could look at. And we could see what it was doing for a lot of our guys, the younger ones especially, just from a career development standpoint. I mean, I've been watching it kind of from the
Mm.
sidelines now that I live 12 hours south of there. But seeing these guys who started off in the yard who are moving into higher and higher positions and just, yeah, the development that's available to them. So, yeah, I mean, there is always this little bit of like, what's happening to the thing that we work so hard on, but at the same time, you just got to be excited for how it's going to impact all the other people. We had what
Mm.
75 employees or so there, and they've all gone on to do great things with Herc now.
Yeah, it sounds like it created a lot of opportunities for people, right? Because if you have 75 employees, well, there's only so many people, places you can move up in an organization. When that goes to thousands, and a company that's growing fast and being aggressive on acquisitions, there's just more opportunities. There's more professional development. Our company is 25 people. Like, reality is we don't have resources to onboard and train people for years, right? You sort of figure it out on the
Yeah,
job, and a lot of smaller rental companies, you get on the job training, and it's sort of just figured out as you go. The national players can invest more in development and professional services, and it sounds like the more junior, younger people were able to benefit from that. Were there any surprises or anything that was like, oh, I didn't think it would go like that as you kind of went through the acquisition, either during the process or at the end of it?
yeah. There were a couple of things about that. Let me think about some of them. I mean, some of the integration stuff went really smooth, right? Like they had track unit, and so we're having to move over all of our track unit stuff for telematics. There was a real system for how to move from our ERP into theirs, and, the acquisition team that Herc has is really, like, top notch. I mean, they did a really good job coming in and kinda laying out, "Hey, here's what this is gonna look like," and, I mean, in the rental world, everything, you build a plan that changes, like, immediately, but the
Mm.
communication was good, we were able to figure it out, and, there were some bumps with, like, forgetting passwords to certain accounts that took us a while to figure out, okay, who actually owns this and, like, who manages this again, and, some of that kinda stuff, but, I mean, overall, it was a pretty smooth experience.
It's good to hear. You don't always hear the positive. You sort of hear some of those horror stories, and it's a lot to go through an acquisition. It sounds like Herc has a team, and they made it easy for you guys, as easy as possible. What's
They
been
did,
some of the
yeah,
differences? So go ahead.
I was just thinking about that. Some of the ways that, like, the business changed, I mean, we were running trucks 7 days a week. We had a team of part-time drivers. We had 2 dispatchers, one that would start at probably 4:30 in the morning and then one that finished when the work was done. And so coming into a larger environment, a little bit of the Wild West theme slowed down and there's more discipline and order that was brought in. The mentality that we had at RentalWorks at that time was just get it done. Like we're just gonna figure it out, and that meant it was really really scrappy, and which is a lot of fun, but you can't move something that once we were required, the speed at which you're going to move a barge is going to be very different than what you're going to do with a little ski boat. So that yeah, that was definitely a new perspective.
It's almost like Jello. You're sorta can shake it, but it's still gonna sort of stay in the same place. I've been part of mostly startups. I've been part of 2 exits, 1 acquisition by Cox Enterprises, Cox Automotive, and you just get there and things are totally different. There's positives, right? But certain people, like myself, sort of like to go fast, and it's harder to do in big companies. Do you feel like the stress levels are decreased at all, or maybe even the workload in a sense? Because if it's like, hey, we're not gonna do deliveries at 4 in the morning anymore, you get more resources, more people. Did that ultimately allow people to go, okay, like I can take a breath for a second, maybe take more vacation, maybe not work till 11 o'clock at night all the time? Did you sort of see some of that in the culture at all?
I did, yeah. It's kind of both and right. So like one of the things that I used to be responsible for was stolen equipment recovery. And so if something went missing, I would figure out where it is and I would kind of lead the hunt and I would get it done. And that meant that you would get calls at all hours and you just had to figure it out. And you might have, we had a track loader that was stolen off a job in DC and taken to a barn in West Virginia. And we probably had something stolen, I'd say 3 to 4 times a year. Sometimes you
Mm,
get the call where the customer just had a laborer move it and didn't tell anybody where they moved it to, and it was a big job site. And you can just pull it up and say, "Oh yeah, it's over here." But sometimes, you'd have geofences for state lines, and if something crosses a state line at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it's like this is a problem. Like I should probably
mm.
address this. Well, when we became part of her, they had entire teams of people who dealt with this. So you
Mm.
just submitted it on and said, "Hey, here's the data. Here's what we've got. Let me know what you need." And so, there is this almost like a weight was lifted off and like, "Oh, there are resources here, and, like, people can help figure this out, and this is a good thing."
I'm curious, like, ballpark recovery rates for Herc's team versus you? Like, was there a noticeable difference? Like, was one more effective than the other at actually recovering the stolen equipment?
That's a really good question, and I don't have good data to support that, mostly because I think we only lost one piece during the time that I was there when Herc still owned it,
Mm,
and that was a uniquely frustrating one because it was a dingo that was stolen that was pinging inside this garage, and I'm sitting here thinking in the old days, like, we would've just figured it out, but now, like,
mm.
there's structure and there's rules, and we need to be in line with them, and so we can report it to the police, and the police basically said, "Well, this is what you have insurance for." And I just walked away from that thinking that just doesn't compute for me. Like, I don't know. I've never seen like, what is
Yeah,
this? Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I mean, their team was really good, but I don't have the data to say, "Oh, we were at, 95 and they were at 98 or 93 or
No, no,
whatever."
yeah, I was just curious about how, I don't know, because sometimes they have more resources, but at the same time, you've got the hustle and you feel more pride in it because it's your smaller company, right?
Yeah, well, like, I know the guy that owns it, and so I've gotta go back and
Right,
say, "Hey, you entrusted us with this, $60,000 unit, and it's gone, and I'm
right.
sorry." And, like, I don't like, you get comfortable having uncomfortable conversations, but there's
Yeah.
some that you just wanna avoid, and that would be one of them. So,
Y
like, we're yeah, it's just a totally different animal.
Yeah, and theft obviously has been a hot topic the last year or two. There's a lot of technology things you can do. The GPS side with the tracking, even the ghost tracking. Some device if you unplug it, it still tracks it. And then
Yeah,
obviously up front, the license verification. So having it scanned, verified, having them take a selfie and match that. Things like that
right.
could go a long way. It's never gonna get to zero, but ARA said $100 million of equipment was stolen last year, right? So that's a
I
real
believe it.
number, and split across independent rental companies that can be painful. So uh, anyways, so tell us about what you're doing now. You're at Empower Rental Group. What is ERG, and what is your role there today?
Yeah, so I came here, it was a year ago at the end of August, and again, we've got these 2 locations that I'm responsible for. We have, I believe, 36 overall, but, Northport and Jasper, and so what I'm doing is building teams here so that we can just increase market share, right? Like,
Hmm.
we hired 2 sales reps in the Birmingham area. We're moving in on Birmingham. We've so this was a private equity roll up. So there were a bunch of mom and pops that all, were joined under the same brand, and so it's been a lot of fun if you like creative problem solving, like figuring out how all these pieces are going to fit together, because you've got a bunch of different cultures, a bunch of different people who many of them have done things a certain way for a long time. And you're having to kind of work it out relationally and figure out, okay, well, how are we doing this moving forward? And what does that look like? And so, a lot of what I do here and what I tell my teams here is that what I want to be responsible for is just reducing the friction that's inside these 2 branches. And so how can we figure out how to get to yes, how to get more equipment on rent, how to, get things delivered faster, repaired quicker. And so it's a lot of just meeting with the guys and seeing, okay, well, what are the pain points that we're experiencing? And then trying to be creative about how we're fixing them. Um, so we're training up. I've got an operations manager in our Jasper branch. He runs that store, you know, he runs it every day. I'm there probably 1 day a week, and we just hired somebody in Northport, about 2 or 3 months ago, and so he's been training up to run a lot of the day to day here, and that's what I'm doing. We have about 22 employees across the 2 locations, probably 20 million or so in fleet.
And how many total locations under the ERG umbrella right now?
I believe it's 36, I think is the current
36
number. We've got a
locations.
couple in development, but yeah.
Do you feel like you're closer to, the 6 location independent or the Herc for you guys? You guys are sort of in the middle. What does it feel like when you go to work every
It
day?
is in the middle, but it feels more independent. I think because we're so new that we're still
Mm,
working out a lot of policy and procedural and figuring out like, hey, how do you do this? And so there's a lot of trial and error, and I really
mm.
love that. Like, I love just getting your hands dirty and kind of figuring out how to make it work, right? We don't have, we have some good procedures, like standard operating procedures written out, but there's not a tremendous amount of them, and we change them, as frequently as we need to. It's a pretty flat organization hierarchically, um, in that, we're all, empowered to make decisions and get things done, and that's been really helpful. So
Yeah, I
it
like
feels, yeah,
the
it
name
feels more
drop.
like being independent. Yeah, right.
Yeah, you feel empowered, there you go. Nice,
It works. Yeah.
drop. What's been the biggest challenge for you guys right now? Is it finding people? You mentioned you're hiring people. Is it the theft issue? Is it, some people are having a slower season? What's kind of the things that keep you up top of mind right now?
Yeah, the first 6 months of the year were pretty slow. I read somewhere it was like the wettest 6 months we'd had in 50 years
Mm,
or something, and that was certainly true. Now we've seen that change. I mean, our utilization is strong right now. If I could fix 2 or 3 things tomorrow, one of them would definitely be just how we do hiring. It has been difficult to find good people who want to do the work. I hired a guy in a wash pit. This was last week. Called him and talked to him, before he took the job. This was coming through a temp agency. We just needed somebody for a little bit to get us over this hurdle. I said, look, I just want to be really upfront with you. This job is, you're managing the equipment yard. That means you will be outside for 10 hours a day, whatever the weather is, probably holding a pressure washer, potentially loading and unloading customers, making sure everything looks clean. Are you aware of the physical requirements and expectations of this job? It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, no, I got it. I got it. Well, I go out there the first morning he's hired, and by like 9 o'clock, he walks up. He's like, hey, I can't do this. I was wrong. I'm out of here. And that was it. And, it probably took us a couple weeks to find that candidate. And we're, trying to Yeah, trying to find more. It's been We've been really fortunate. So the turns out the best way to find people is also relationally. We'll
mm.
we'll ask our sales reps or the counter guys like, "Hey, do you know anybody that might be a good fit for this?" Or, because the industry there's so much moving around all the time that it's like, "Oh yeah, I worked with this driver, 3 jobs ago and he was great. We should call him." And so our most successful recruiting comes that way. We're still working on figuring out how to promote jobs and draw them in other ways.
One of our previous guests, Dan Maitland, came on maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago. He talked about his first interview graduating college at a rental company, and he drove by the building and was like, it was sort of, a little dilapidated, rundown. He almost didn't go to the interview. He was like, I cannot, because you're in college, you're like, I'm going to be working in a skyscraper in Manhattan. I'm going to be the CEO in 3 years. And it's not how life is. And, it sounds like that guy had a similar experience. He got on the job, was like, this is not what I thought I signed up for, which to his credit, though, at least he realized that on day one. It didn't just go in 3 months of training and then left, right? It probably saved
Absolutely.
you a lot of wasted energy. How important is relationships and networking? You mentioned it, like from your perspective, how it got you into the rental industry. It's helped, your best hires have come
Yeah.
through relationships and networking. How important is that in life, but also just in particular in the equipment rental space?
I mean, I don't think there's a way to overstate the importance of it. And, you really need to think about how you can rely on vendors as well. I mean, those are some of the greatest relational sources of relational capital. I mean, I'll tell you this story. When I was running our dispatch, our on rate or our on time delivery percentage was stuck kind of in the 70% area. Like I could not
Mm.
budge past it. And so I called one of our vendors and we were going to the ARA show together or something. I said, hey, I need to, I'd really like to meet this person at this other company. Can you set up a dinner between the two of us? And I'll bring this prospect for you so that, you can put on your expense account. I can meet this person. I can figure out how they're doing it because I know they're doing it better than I am. And that'd be great. And they set it up and we did it. And we bumped our on time delivery percent from mid 70s to it was hovering in like the 95, 97% area for the last probably year or so. So, it's important to I think about how to word this. This industry is big, but you're only a couple of phone calls away from almost anybody. And so, making sure that you're watching your reputation, that you're taking care of other people, that you're, helping out other folks is going to get you a long way. And it's really amazing. I mean, just another number of other independent rental people that I'd come across at different trade shows and different conferences that you could call and say, hey, what are you doing about this? And how is this working for you? And, just kind of comparing, contrasting how our businesses operate. I mean, if you're doing work in somebody else's backyard, they're going to be a little bit less likely to tell you all their trade secrets. But that's why it's great to go to, the rental show or go to a users conference or go to some of these things, because you can meet people from all over the country who are figuring out problems. I mean, another example of this, when Maryland legalized medicinal marijuana, we were having problems because we were renting dehumidifiers to grow houses, and they would come
Mm,
back just reeking. Like, you couldn't use them in a residential environment again. So
mm,
we called some friends with a rental business out in Colorado who was a few years ahead of
mm.
Maryland. Said, "Hey, what are you guys doing about this? Like, we were like trying to bleach these things. We're trying to clean them every way we can. We cannot figure this out. What's the strategy here?" And they were really straightforward. Said, we just dedicated a certain percentage of our fleet to service that market, and we don't cross pollinate there. And okay, well, at least we have an answer now. Maybe it wasn't like,
Yeah.
oh, just use Simple Green or something, but like we know how to address this. And you can make those kinds of calls from meeting people at these conferences and these places, and just taking a genuine interest in them and their families and their kids and their businesses, and what's important to them. It's amazing how helpful people in this industry really are. I mean, it's effectively what we do, right? We figure out, somebody says they need to put a hole in the ground or something, we're going to figure out how to get that done. But it's just it's a good industry, and that's, the people are probably why.
Yeah, for sure, and I think what you're talking about is community, and I think especially just, like, if you look at society, like, people are becoming more anxious and more depressed, more disjointed, more polarized, more on their phones. I was in a meeting earlier and someone used the phrase IRL, which is in real life, and it's just crazy that you have to state that it's in real life because for 99.9% of human history, everything was real life, and now it's become so digital and remote that, uh, you have to state that this is gonna be an in-person thing, right? It's crazy, right?
Really
I think
is.
you think about what your success and the things you've done is it's come down to people and the different things you've done. Have you experienced any of the peer groups? There's a peer group movement with Dan Crowley, what they do, and obviously the shows, just talking to people. Do you do anything formally with any peer groups, or is that something you haven't felt is necessary because you sort of you've already met a lot of people and you know a lot of the folks already?
No, I think there's definitely a value add for that, right? And we had people who did that at RentalWorks. We have not explored it here at Empower, but it's definitely something on the radar for future use. So
I was telling everyone for a while, it's like, "You gotta join a peer group in the rental industry," and then I was like, "I'm not in a peer group." So, I joined one a year ago for software CEOs, and we had our annual
yeah,
meeting last week. There were 35 of us, and it was awesome, and it was like a geek squad convention, a bunch of nerds in a room for a few days, but I came back, I hung out with my friends here in Atlanta, and, it's great to see them. We have different interests in sports and college football, but, like, being at that peer group retreat, I was like, "Those are my people." We have, like, different backgrounds, we're from different countries, different beliefs, but we all have this one particular thing we love to talk about, and it felt like I was in my tribe, and I'm
yeah,
obviously not a rental company owner or manager. I probably know less about fleet than anyone we've had on the podcast, but I think that same thing sort of applies here, right? Where you can find, uh, people who are in the industry. The whole thing, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think the industry has
yeah.
really embraced that, where people are, generally willing to help. If you're trying to compete in your backyard, maybe not so much, but 99% of the time, things I've seen, people are open to conversation and they generally want to talk and they want to help. And it sounds like that's been your experience as well.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And even our conversation, we met 5 years ago. I was 2 weeks into like, "Hey, I think we should start this thing," and you guys spent an hour with me, and you probably told me it's a stupid idea, which probably was at the time, but,
I'm glad you stuck
you
with
probably
it.
you got me to the right, the kinda next steps here. So, tell me about why you love the rental industry. You didn't grow
Yeah.
up in it. Your dad's background and his company is opposite of this in many ways. Why did you stick it out? Why are you still here?
So this business gives you an incredible opportunity to invest in the lives of other people. And I've been privileged with the opportunity to take guys who, one guy we hired on in the yard, he applied 4 or 5 times for a yard role. Maybe he was 18 at the time. And we helped him get his CDL and kind of move him through his career. And that's probably happened 4 or 5 times. I mean, you can take, we talk about this a lot, that really all you need to be successful as an employee in this industry is a really good work ethic. Like, maybe not all you
Mm,
need, but that's certainly the biggest thing, right? If you have a good work ethic and a spirit that's willing to be taught, um, then there's almost no limit for how you can improve the lives of others. I mean, just think about all the people that came in the wash pit and end up getting their CDLs and going on to, make six figures driving a truck somewhere, become mechanics, and then end up being service managers. And it's there's not like this isn't like the finance business where you should really have like a Series 7, a CFP, like all these licenses are expensive to get, and that here like you just need to show up and be ready to get stuff done and be, make one mistake less than you made the day before, right? You just got to learn a little bit
mm.
more each day. And if you can do that, then, from somebody in my seat, in the management seat, the opportunity that we have to improve the lives of our employees and therefore their families. I mean, it's just this tremendous privilege.
Mm. It's interesting you're talking about impact. I thought you were going to talk about all this equipment that's building these hospitals and all this stuff, but you talk about the employees and the people and the jobs that you've been able to create and the opportunities you've been able to give your team. That's where you went.
Yes, I mean, and it's a lot of fun to drive by a building and tell your kid, "Hey, we had multiple boom lifts on that." Like, there is kind of
Yeah.
a pride thing in that, but at the end of the day, what's really special about this industry is how we can help other folks, and really, I mean, have them move up the tax brackets, right? Like, you can take
Mm.
somebody in almost a minimum wage job and teach them how to provide for a family, and there's some real like, that's a really good thing.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, if you have like you said, growth mindset, you're open minded and you're willing to work hard, you can get a job at a rental company, right? In the yard, doing something, minimum wage, and now you're in the company. And if you continue to work hard and grow, you can move up to become drivers and then maybe assistant general managers. And we had some guests on, they started straight out of high school. First job was in high school. And now they became general manager. Now they after 25 years, they own part of the business, right? There's not many
Yeah.
industries you can go from high school graduate straight out of high school to owner of the company. Not like if you're going to go work
Right.
at Amazon, you're not going to do that, right? In software space, it's hard to do that. You got to be professionally trained. Same with the financial services industry. What you're describing is an industry that really, it's almost like a meritocracy in a sense. Like if you show up and you do the right thing and you work hard enough over enough period of time, you will be successful. It's almost guaranteed in a
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely.
And we're sort of what motivates you to keep staying in the industry, right? So you've been here 10 years. It sounds like you're excited about it. What keeps driving you forward for the next 10 years?
People talk about how it gets in your blood, and there's not really a way to explain that unless you've
Yeah.
experienced it, but it really does. Like, I couldn't have named 3, 3 or 4 equipment manufacturers 15 years ago. Like, I had no idea. And now,
Mm.
like, every time I drive by a job site or see a piece of equipment on the side of the road, I'm looking to see, number 1, who manufactured it, number 2, was it a rental business or, did it come from an owned fleet? There's something about the kinda speed at which we operate that's a whole lot of fun. I love seeing the development of our people and the developments of the
Mm.
markets and kind of how we can positively impact things over time. That's just a lot of fun for me. Um, you know, I I think it's a great industry that's like we've talked about is only going to continue to grow. And I as before I took this job, I was kind of exploring like, do I want to stay in this or do I want to look at, some kind of a tangent industry? Maybe look at like a scaffolding thing or maybe look at, something. I don't know. And every time I did, I would just go back to the rental jobs and see like, okay, this is where I belong. I have a lot of fun doing this. Not every day is all, sunshine and rainbows, but overall it's a fun industry to be a part of.
And I think it gives you purpose. It does for me at least. There's hard days and good days, but it just feels good because what you're doing, the work itself is moving our country forward. It's moving, it's core infrastructure. It's, highways and houses and hospitals, and it's real work that has value to society. You're not trading Bitcoin like meme coins and trying to
Right.
time the market. Like you're actually adding value. Plus, sort of the meritocracy element where you can take someone off the street in a sense and give them a job, and they have it in themselves to kind of work up the way up the ladder, up the tax brackets. It just sort of feels it's an industry that feels good to work in.
Yeah, there's a very tangible thing about this. I remember when I was in the financial advising side, like you'd always I mean, this is oversimplifying it, but one of the key goals is to make sure that you don't outlive your assets, right? Well, that could be like a really long timeline. Here, we're doing day projects, weekend projects. I think 44% of the contracts out of this store are multi-month deals. We're helping build, the coal mines that are powering our homes. I mean, this is like really, this is important work. And so that, like you're saying, is a sense of purpose behind that.
Yeah, mission critical in a sense, right? Uh,
Yeah.
we were talking earlier about what values are most important for independent rental companies. You kind of came up with the word scrappy. Can you tell me more about why rental companies need to be thinking about scrappy? That's the number one thing they should be thinking about.
Yeah, I love that as a core. It's one of our core values here at Empower. And when I was applying here, you get asked, like, why would you want to work here? And I looked at the core values and thought this, like, if I was going to create a company, these would be very similar to the ones that I would do. And the
Mhm.
value in Scrappy is that, like, the national players are really, really important for a lot of good reasons, right? They're at the forefront of safety. They're at the forefront of a lot of technology. They're kind of pushing these things, but it's the independence where, if you call at 8 o'clock at night because something's happened, like, we're answering the phone. Like, it's not going to an automated thing. Like, we're gonna figure out how to get this done. And if something has to happen, you know, the the independent groups are able to be more agile in solving the customer's problems. And so that's really like it's this customer service is what we do, right? Somebody calls, they get a problem, we got to fix it. And so if you as an employee are always thinking about how can I get to yes and how can I figure out how to get this thing done, that would put you light years ahead of a lot of the major players who um, I'll give you an example. Is during COVID, a lot of the larger folks were telling their sales staff they need to work from home. We told all of our guys, if you're not out there in a job site at 7 a.m., you need to find a new career. Like if our people are working, we are working, and so we will get out there and we will figure it out. And that element, like, just that mindset, that hustle mindset, really kind of catapulted the business that we were running at the time. And I think you have to carry that into everything you do. It's just how can we make one more rental happen? How can we get one more delivery today? Get one more unit off the down line? If you're just constantly pushing on that, then it'll compound, and over time, you're going to find yourself ahead of the curve.
And not every industry can be scrappy. And I was at this retreat last week, and there's people who sell software to big to public school systems, and the other ones who do IT software for government. I'm like, talk about sales cycle of 3 years. Like, there's regulation and red tape. Rental industry, you can move pretty fast on stuff, and it's a lot. And it's sort of you think about American capitalism. If you work hard, you take the risk, and you put, you can build a successful business. That industry and rental, you definitely can. And scrappiness, for example, if you are doing data security for a hospital, I don't know if I would say scrappy is number one value, but for our space, right? This
Yeah,
is where if you're a scrappy person, be in the rental industry.
absolutely. I mean, I bet 80% or more of our contracts are for delivery within 24 hours when they're called in. You have to be able to move quickly. Like, and that's, I mean, because that's the deal, right? Is a lot of contractors have a list of their 3 or 4 favorite reps, and they call the first one, "How soon can you get it here?" And if your answer isn't, "I'm loading it up now," then they might go to the next guy, and, that's just part of the business.
Or hey, it's 5:05, we close at 5, so I'm not gonna answer the phone. Like that, you're not gonna be
Yeah,
in
yeah,
business
no,
very
we're
long.
we're answering the phone. Yeah.
Last thing I want to ask about was on the AI stuff. It's my trigger word because I've been thinking a lot about that. I mean, how are you thinking about that in the rental industry? Are the things you guys are doing today, and how do you see that kind of playing forward in the next few years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I'm doing with it right now is really just to help analyze large sets of data that used to take me forever to go through, like, whether it's Google Sheets or, I mean, Excel sheets or whatever we're doing. If I need to take a list of things and reframe it or just kind of get my mind around it. Like, here's an example of this. I was using Gemini because I summed up every zip code for the 4 sales reps that I have working for me and asked it to compile or to compare the area in square miles to that of a US state. And so it kicked back. And so it gives me like, okay, so when I go to, my people and say, hey, I really need another driver. Here's the area that we're covering. By the way, it's the size of New Jersey. Like, this is what
Mm.
we're doing here. And so, I'm not like we were, I think, on the early end for adopting track unit at RentalWorks. And I was a big believer in telematics. I think that as that data, as we figure out, how to use it, AI is going to play a big role in that. We're seeing it more and more in the software. We're using it in some dispatching stuff. I think it's probably important to think about what it won't replace. We
Mm.
still need people turning wrenches. We still need people, I'm sure we'll have autonomous vehicles at some point. But right now we don't. We still need people to go out and do familiarization, to do the, mobile elevated work platform training and all that. But it's going to be a bigger and bigger part of our industry.
So it sounds like you were the early days of telematics and you saw where that was moving, and you're now sort of the early days of AI. And we don't know what inning it is, but it seems like we probably still may be in the first inning, and which is crazy to think about. Do you think this is going to impact rental companies uh, in some major way in the next 5 or 10 years? Or how do you mentioned the things it won't replace, but what are some of the things that it could replace or supplement within a rental company if you kind of give it 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of your financial metrics, right? We're going to start looking
Mm,
at what's underutilized. And Rouse does a really good job with giving you some of this data, just as far as utilization rates and that kind of thing. But we'll see more influence of AI in that. I think route optimization from a dispatching perspective is going to play more and more of a role. We're seeing it in like analyzing call data, for coaching
mhm,
employees on, hey, here's how, like, we used to say anytime the phone rings, your objective was to write a reservation. Like that's what you need to do. If they're calling
mhm.
asking for a price on something, hey, it's 350 for a weekend. Can I go ahead and book one for you for Friday? Like you're just driving to that. And I think having some of those AI tools to analyze calls and, yeah, help provide good coaching for how we're handling incoming traffic. We will probably see it, more in marketing and recruiting. I mean, I'm thinking about how we're advertising for jobs and the opportunity for AI to influence that. We're going to have a lot of marginal improvements and probably two or three big whammies. Um, but it's not something that's going to replace our industry.
No, it's not gonna replace our industry your industry. It may replace our industry in software. That was 75% of the conversation last week with the software tree. And I think the takeaway for us, it was, that it actually will help software companies too, in particular, but I think the bar of what is required from your software company is gonna go up dramatically, which is good. So if you're a
Yeah,
rental company and you use telematics or a rental software, like, what they're offering you should be multiple times better within 2, 3 years. And, I
yeah,
think what's encouraging to me is how much the rental industry, but everybody in society has embraced AI. Like I'm not necessarily Team Skynet where it's going to take over the whole world necessarily. I think we should be mindful of that. But compared to other trends, technology and e-commerce and the internet and cloud and mobile sort of took time. AI is just going so fast and it's going, and everybody is adopting it. So it'll be interesting. I do think things are going to change a lot. It's putting a lot of pressure on the rental softwares to keep up. But ultimately, I think it's going to empower rental companies to be able to do more with even less in a sense. So it's
yeah,
exciting, and I think rental companies are asking more of it. 3 months ago, people were not asking about AI. No, every week, almost every day, rental companies are asking, "What are you doing with AI?" And
yeah.
it's the rate of change is going very fast right now.
It is. Yeah, it is.
It's exciting times. Well, Rob, it's been great having you on today. Last question I like to ask everyone: best career advice you've gotten, or any career advice that's helped shape your success that you've had in the rental industry.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think really leaning on relationships, right? Always be willing
Mm.
to help out people and then figure out, there's always something that you can learn how to do better. And so, focusing on finding a couple of mentors, people who can kind of walk you through, hey, here's some of the things that I botched me when I was younger. And, here's some pitfalls that you can avoid, and making sure that, you're doing the same for a couple of people who are a little bit more junior than you.
I love that. I mean, even our story, right? Our relationships, all the people we know, met each other 5 years ago when I was day one in the rental industry. You were able to help me out, and we have people that we've known for mutually for 20 years. So that's how life is. I wouldn't be surprised if our paths continue to cross again in the future. It's a small industry, especially if you're willing to help and willing to meet new people. So, anyways, Rob, I appreciate you
Same
spending
here for
time with
me.
us today and coming on the Rental Roundtable.
Thanks for having me on, Kyle. I really enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.